में उजागे का कुछ कमाल.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus, Sacoor, and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. I will be interviewing guests shortly. Today, the date is Wednesday, the 3rd of July, 2024. We already passed the mid-year, 27th of Zulhijjah, 1445. So we passed Hajj as well. Most of the Hajis have returned. Now, on tonight's show, we're going to unpack the appointment of the Government of National Unity Cabinet and its implications. If you recall, last week we were speculating the reason for the delay in the announcement of the cabinet by President Ramaphosa, and there was a lot of debate and heckling and disagreements going on, and there was people waiting in anticipation as to what the cabinet will comprise of. So we will chat about the composition of the cabinet and indeed some of its implications. We will also chat briefly about some of the humanitarian projects that some NGOs are doing to help our people, particularly on the unemployment sector. With me, I have some specialist guests that could talk on that various subjects this evening. I have Zahid Fakey. Zahid is the ex-partner of PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. For 21 years, he spent there as a chartered accountant. He's also the CEO of WeFeed, an NPO that does a lot of feeding and empowering of unemployment individuals. And he worked with the Ansaar Foundation and indeed other NGOs. He's also an independent director of the Al Barakah Bank and also involved in various other companies. I also have live in the studio Mohamed Ayaz Carrim, hailing all the way from Johannesburg. He's the head of production at Radio Al Ansar, and he flew down to Durban this morning, nice and tired, and he's keen to join me to chat about the GNU because he says he's been following the program very, very, wisely and carefully, and he's got some, comments to make whether this GNU will work and whether the right cabinet ministers have been appointed. I also have with me in the studio, and he was our guest last week, an astute politician in the National Assembly, but this year Imam, couldn't make it. Imam Mansoor Ahmad Sheikh, he was the president of AM4C, and Imam will share some of his expertise and also give us some input on the appointment of the cabinet ministers and also what will happen to the opposition parties like MK as well as EFF. How will they react? Because he's been in parliament for more than 10 years and also a politician for quite a while. So we would like to hear his input and how he sees the situation, having been in that space for a number of years. Later in the program, we'll look at the economic reaction to these appointments. We'll have Brother Hassan Motala. He's an economist, also a chartered accountant. He's always been in our studio. He comes with some expert financial advice. But Zahid Fakey is also, quite au fait with the financial implications, but maybe he's keeping away from the financial side at this stage. But I'm sure we'll tackle him on some input on the financial side as well. The show is interactive and we welcome your comments, which can be sent to us on the studio WhatsApp number 0609041056. And please send through your WhatsApp messages and certainly our guests will respond. So first up, I will kick off with Zahid Fakey. Zahid, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah for having me on your show.
Zahid, we're delighted to have you, but because I know during COVID when things were really bad, you were part of a committee of, Muslims for Humanity. It was a project formulated by, a few companies and many NGOs were invited to provide humanitarian service to the people who were battling, because we know that there was a full lockdown, subsequent lockdowns, and there was a shortage of commodities, etc. So we all had to put our resources together and respond. And I think we feed together with other NPOs played a magnificent part in ensuring that we took care of the needs of our community. So I remember you from there. But before we talk about we feed and the humanitarian work that this organization is doing, and I know Ansaar works closely with your organization as well, and I'm glad I met you because you came from the corporate sector, so am I, and there's a kind of pleasure we derive from doing humanitarian work after being involved in the corporate sector. Perhaps you just want to briefly give us a bit of a background on, sort of your involvement in the auditing profession at PwC, and then what prompted you to sort of retire from that profession and humanitarian work. It's a big shift.
Yeah. So it was quite interesting. So Alhamdulillah, I was fortunate to have had a beautiful journey in terms of my career, a lot of mentors around me, etc. So I qualified as a chartered accountant in 2000, and I had the opportunity of traveling all over the world. And I recall back in December 2024, 2004, the tsunami hit, and I was working in the United States that time, and what had happened was we immediately, as a family, decided to contribute to the relief aid. We came back very soon thereafter in February 2005, and we were walking in Pavilion, and we bumped into Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman. And Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman is a very close family friend of ours because my mom's family hails from Pietermaritzburg, and he spent a lot of time with my grandma. My grandma was one of his mentors as well. And we said, we'd like to take a sabbatical for 6 months, come across to Indonesia with your team and help out there. And he looked straight in our eyes and said, you know what? I don't need chartered accountants. I can fill 3 planes with chartered accountants. I need doctors. All right. So we felt a bit helpless. And my wife actually did a small medical course to kind of bridge that gap thereafter. But we applied ourselves and said, you know what, there has to be some way we can actually give back. So that time I was around 32 years old. So I set a goal to retire from the profession at 40 to give back, and specifically in 2 sectors, in education and health. Alhamdulillah, I reached 40 and I never retired from the profession. And at the age of 43, my wife asked me, told me that you've reached all your goals. However, you haven't actually kind of achieved this goal. What are you going to do about it? And long story short, we went on a trip to Cambodia. We made istikhara, and it was time for me to move on. But what built it up, aside from setting the goal, is the mentorship I had along the line to actually get there. My mom, my dad, my grandma, but specifically I had a sheikh. He's late now. A lot of the people from Durban that went to Anjuman school would have known him. Ghulam Mohiuddin Khazi. He was my sheikh from the time I was in grade 10, and he mentored me through the process. And he told me one day, you're going to have to actually give this all up and
his family is involved with Al-Ansar.
Alhamdulillah, yeah. Rashid Qazi and Mohamed Qari Saad.
Yeah, Qari Saad, his daughter Salma Qazi,
yes.
So they're all involved.
Yes. So he was a great inspiration for me. And Alhamdulillah, I hope that whatever I do, Allah accepts it, and he also gets the benefit for it, for what I'm doing as well.
No, Alhamdulillah. Now to, from a financial sort of aspect, when one joins PwC and you're a partner there, you're on a quite high financial wicket. And obviously being linked to a sheikh and mentored, you suddenly made the move to an unknown territory, although you had some consciousness about it. What prompted you? Is that about the humanitarian need, and from an Islamic perspective, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam has indicated that the best amongst us are those that help others, that got the best character, because deen is 5 times salah is absolutely compulsory, other ibadat is compulsory, hajj and fasting, and then to sort of do other good amals, but very often we do the compulsory part and we forget about the humanitarian side. So having been mentored by Sheikh Qazi, was there sort of an urgent aspiration on your side that, listen, I have to take this route while I'm young, no sense doing it when I'm old and I don't have the strength? What was the main reasoning for jumping ship, if I would say?
I guess there's many factors to it. I think you having worked in the corporate field, you know that, donating money is a very easy thing. It takes a couple of seconds. The gratification is short-lived, right? So what I did whilst I was at PwC, I mentored my employees to actually give back, to communities and that kind of thing. Then I reached a point in my life where I realized that no matter what I did for my staff, PwC was always going to employ the 20 or 30 people every year within my department, right? And that wasn't giving me that level of gratification. So I wanted to get more physical. I believe that for me to actually pursue my humanitarian work, specifically on job creation, and that was my passion. My personal impact statement was about creating jobs and protecting jobs. The best way to do it is to create entrepreneurs who will actually create those jobs. Corporates will always employ that fixed number every year, and I thought that was a catalyst to actually kind of go down the route of creating entrepreneurs. So that's what actually drove me to do that. From my perspective, with regards to being a humanitarian, it wasn't a natural thing, but having actually seen on occasion me going around with Hazrat Moin Kazi and some of my friends doing some volunteer work, I found that to be more gratifying than donating money, right? I think one's time is more valuable than cash. I always believe that. So whenever you come to my office, Yunus, inshallah, you come have a cup of coffee and you go to a nice coffee shop at We Feed SA on 61 Henwood Road. You'd see that when I talk about We Feed SA, I talk about you giving me your time and your ideas. And the last thing is I want your money. If you can't give me that, I'll take your money gladly. But more valuable to me is time and ideas.
I remember Imran Khan when he was president of Pakistan, and his sister, when she came into South Africa, and she was talking to a whole lot of NGOs, and she put in a video of Imran Khan and the message he gave, and he said exactly what you were saying. It's not easy to give time, because the time you give, you value the need for the people's rights out there. For example, employment. Now, if people are unemployed, how are they going to put food on the table? And this is where criminalization comes in. And in South Africa, recently, when I did a program with some labor organization, indications are like 32 or 33% of people that have to be employed are unemployed, and the government is not responding. The private sector doesn't have the resources. As you said, PwC can employ 10, but those people that are walking the streets and mugging people, etc., they're resorting to those tactics. Some of them are genuinely lazy, but others are doing it because they've got no choice. Now, I remember that many NGOs are beginning to respond, not only feeding, but they say instead of giving the guy the fish, teach him how to fish. So that was one of the reasons why you felt there's a need, so that you won't only put food for a couple of days or a couple of months or on specific days, like what some organizations do, including Ansaar. You're really looking at having food regularly on this guy's table by providing opportunities. Now, when you sort of formed or you were part of We Feed NPO, your sharp focus in opportunities for the unemployed and unskilled people. Can you explain how did you target the unskilled people, and where did you target this particular sort of number of people, and how successful you were in this process?
Okay, so I'm just going to take one step back with regards to the journey, so you get a full picture around it. So when I left PwC in 2018, and inshallah at the end of this month it'll be 6 years since I've left, I actually never formed We Feed SA. We Feed SA is a culmination of like-minded people, friends of mine, Nazir Vania from Ispingo, Shiraz Aku, Fuad Suleiman, Hafiz Ismail Dawood. So people that are well known in the community. Ibrahim Khan from Metro. He was one of the friends that we actually worked together. So that We Feed SA actually started during COVID. But prior to that, my focus was around health and education in the built environment, in built environment projects, building madarises, masajids, revamping schools and building clinics, etc. So we go into COVID and we are forced the hand to form a formal organization, We Feed SA, purely because of the volume. We are feeding something like 12,000 meals a day, equivalent of 185,000 a day that we are spending on food, right? And it was a real need. People couldn't work, so there was a real need for food. So we moved from lockdown 5 to lockdown 3 with no support from anyone but the generosity of the Muslim community, and I must say a few non-Muslim people actually came on board as well. And Alhamdulillah, it went quite well, but we realized that, this is not sustainable. So the board actually sat down, re-looking at our strategy and said, we need to look at sustainable solutions. It was always the intent, but we had to do what we had to do between lockdown 5 and lockdown 3. So what had happened then was that we decided that we're going to swing our spending 80% towards empowerment and education and 20% towards feeding, without reducing the numbers, because we were growing. So the number of people we were feeding was growing. It was always the start to our transaction with these beneficiaries before we empower and educate them. So we focused on mentorships, we focused on bursaries, etc., career guidance. Alhamdulillah, our name got out there nationally and globally. We focused predominantly in KZN, but we only work in South Africa. And after the flooding, and this is where we were put on the map, I would say, not to boast about it, but it's all through the will of the Almighty, where the Solidarity Fund approached us. One of the consulting firms called Genesis Analytics called us to talk about what is a sustainable solution with regards to the post-flooding issue. And I gave them four different projects that I believe will create a sustainable solution. They selected 3, and that was boreholes, potable boreholes, repairing of schools, and building homes that were damaged by the flood. Alhamdulillah, as a result of that, our reputation actually got improved, and we became well known nationally. And thereafter, we were approached by the Presidential Stimulus Fund to actually help with the employment project. And last year, we embarked on the project as a new NPO in round 2. This project already ran for round 1, and we executed on the project. Alhamdulillah, 2 Thursdays ago, we concluded that project, and the last Thursday we actually started a new round of employment. Basically, the essentials of that project is we employ 1,000 unemployed, unskilled individuals, pass some skill on to them, give them an opportunity to earn out, bring back dignity in their lives, but also create a pathway for them to be employed. Alhamdulillah, I must say the project was successful. And now in the next round of this project, we have bigger plans with regards to building on those individuals that we employed. We'll retain 60%. And focus on growing social enterprises, which becomes a more sustainable model to fund these type of programs, because these programs are very expensive, and we know what our political climate looks like. We don't know whether this funding will continue. So that's where it is. And the skill that we're giving is basic skill that you and I will always need, from placemaking, so your artisans, from environmental cleaning and greening, your gardening, from youth development, sports, tuition, health and care, basic thing of helping the sick people go through a process to go to a clinic or a hospital. In terms of education, in terms of providing facilities for students, etc. So it's a very all-encompass project. But what's interesting about the project is not only do you provide a skill to the unemployed people, they work in the communities that they come from, and they're also uplifting those communities. So there's a buy-in across from the community, from the individual, and the local government. The reality, Yunus, is that we as the private sector can't go it alone. Neither can the public sector. This collaboration and this partnership is fundamental in us moving forward. But another point I want to actually drive with this, we could have not done it alone as We Feed SA. We went across three municipalities across 93 different sites. We worked with other NPOs. We collaborated with 85 other NPOs. And alhamdulillah, the project was successful. I think that, how the saying goes, if you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run together. And we've achieved a lot of that because of our collaboration with other NPOs as well.
Excellent initiative. Tell me the recruitment process of these unskilled, so-called unemployed individuals. I know you sort of targeted the local areas. How did you go about this recruitment process?
Sure. So this process is a complex process. Think of us as We Feed SA going into a community that we have never ever worked in before. we will not be successful. So what we did is we identified reputable NPOs, CBOs, and community leaders, right? No politicians, and we actually kind of brought them into a meeting to say that this is what we plan to do. This is the projects we're trying to work on, and these are the type of people we're trying to employ. Are you on board with us? And these people actually volunteered their time. So really, it was about setting up town hall meetings and sending out invitations for people to actually apply for these positions. In Phoenix alone, I mean, of the 1,000 that we employed, the average of 1,000, there was we allocated about 400 people there. We had like something like over 1,000 people that applied for those jobs. And alhamdulillah, we employed 400 there, but we kept those CVs of those people that applied for the next round, or if someone dropped off or got a better job. So that's the process that we followed.
Okay, thanks. I want to bring Imam in here. Imam, do you recall back in sort of 2012, 2013, when after elections, the ruling party was concerned about unemployment in the Tekwedi municipality, and we went about an employment program whereby each councillor had to recruit unemployed people, and it became an EPPA program, Employment Public Works Program. And I recall in human settlements, we employed like about 300 unskilled individuals to do cleanup projects and general work, projects. And over the years, we capacitated those unemployed individuals into positions, and many of them are holding managers' positions as we speak. Perhaps you may want to just comment that, is that now lacking in government sector and municipalities, where if you don't create employment opportunities for the unemployed, you're looking for criminal problems that are taking place all over. Come in on that, Imam?
Well, I think first of all, the extended public works program that you're talking about.
Yes, EPPA, yeah.
The unfortunate thing about that, it's politicized right now. And political parties appear to be recruiting those that belong to their own political parties. And that is the difficulty about it. That's the first thing. But I think the very important point we must note, and I remember raising this with the president when he repeatedly said that he's going to create 400,000 jobs. And I asked him to explain that if you got 800,000 entering the job market and you're only creating 400,000 jobs, technically, what does that mean? You're sitting on a ticking time bomb. What is the other 400,000 going to do? And that's the problem we're sitting in. That is why the unemployment rate goes up all the time. What government always talks about is the jobs that they create. They don't talk about the jobs that is being lost because of businesses that are shutting down and things. Just drive around in the CBDs of every province in the country, and you will be shocked to see how many of these business premises are now shut down with to-let signs. That will tell you where we're actually heading to.
So over and above the high unemployment, these businesses closing is creating more unemployment, which obviously the business and government sectors are not responding to.
Which is giving rise to the increase in crime. Crime has to go together with high levels of unemployment.
And obviously, one of the reasons was maladministration and corruption, where funding was being siphoned there, not for the benefit of employment or job creation.
Well, for the first time in South Africa, the number of people that are going hungry to bed and or dying of hunger, malnutrition, children that are dying, is shocking, the statistics. What we find is that what is lacking is a plan to address that. Now, if you look at the stats in 2022, 91,000 children gave birth to children. 88,000 of those children are still in school. Is there a plan to accommodate them? No. Are those children, even those children that are born, they're not even eligible for maintenance from the fathers of those children, because those children are in school too, the fathers. So you can see the crisis that you're creating. So what is happening? I was speaking to a young girl earlier on today. They were here for 2 weeks in Durban. I've put them onto that beauty course, and they graduated and went back home today. And she's 18 years old, already got a baby. And she tells me that 2 years ago, the father of this child was expelled from the school because he had drugs. So my question was, then why did you have a baby from him?
This is a problem.
So you see the crisis we're sitting in.
Yes, we'll take a break on that note, and Zaid will continue with our discussion after that, a few other questions.
The Watch Doctor. For watch repairs, watch batteries, watch straps, 21st keys, engraving, and sound for your occasion. Handled professionally at 263 Sparks Road, Mohammedia Center, Suite 104, Overport, next to the Sparks Road Masjid. Contact Zain on 082 542 3070. The Watch Doctor. The Watch Doctor. Keeping time every time.
Famine, conflict, and severe economic decline make the humanitarian crisis in Yemen the worst in the world. More than 20 million Yemenis do not know where their next meal is coming from, and over 10 million are suffering extreme levels of hunger. With your support, the Al Imdad Foundation delivers essential food aid to starving Yemeni communities. It's a question of survival. So let's do what's right. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
It's celebration time. Simplex Radio's 65th birthday sale is now on.
Defy oven and hob combo, 3,999, save 1,000 Rand.
Defy 210-litre chest freezer, 2,999, save 1,000 Rand.
Kenwood kettle and toaster combo, 799 Rand, save 200 Rand.
Samsung side-by-side fridge, 14,999, save 4,000 Rand.
Kenwood stand mixer, 1799, save 700 Rand.
Get it today, 202 Kenilworth Road, Overport.
Open Sunday, July the 7th until 2:30 p.m. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
The Outreach Slice of Life campaign. Since its inception, our Slice of Life has touched the lives of countless individuals through our distribution to schools, old age homes, orphanages, and deserving families within our community. This initiative has been instrumental in alleviating hunger. For only 9 Rand a loaf, you will be providing a family with their daily staple, bread. Donate now on www.alansar.org.za or call Outreach on 031 208 1601.
Attention all shopaholics and fashion enthusiasts. Get ready for the ultimate shopping extravaganza at the Durban Shopping Fest. Join us from the 5th to 7th July for an unforgettable experience filled with incredible deals, trendy fashion, and so much more. Discover the latest fashion trends, explore a wide range of local and international brands, and indulge in mouth-watering food from the best pop-ups in town. Plus, enjoy live entertainment and exciting activities for the whole family. Don't miss out on the Durban Shopping Fest, where shopping dreams come true. Mark your calendars and join us at Saxony Westwood Mall. See you at the Durban Shopping Fest. Only the best.
Advertising pays. Get your business on the map through advertising with Radio Al Ansar, the station with a proven record. Let's check with Simplex Radio to find out the impact on their business by advertising with Radio Al Ansar.
For us, it works very well. Our sales have increased and more people know about our store. I would definitely recommend advertising on Radio Al Ansar anytime.
There you have it. Join the airwaves and take it up to another level. Call us on 031 208 1601 and ask for Fatima Shahina or Faraz Bucks, our consultants. Let your name be heard by thousands of people. Radio Al Ansar, your partner in business.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM.
Message from the sky, a mercy for mankind. If you lose your way, we'll always be your guide. Far greater than this world, move mountains with its word, fixed every
News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the break, we were briefly chatting about the unemployment situation, and Zahid Fakey mentioned that the organization that he's been involved with, We Feed NPO, together with others, they've employed many thousands of individuals who were unskilled and unemployed, and capacitating them to become, employed in the market. After that, Imam Mansoor mentioned that the Employment Public Works Program of government was intended to empower people, but politicians chose their own colleagues on the ground, and that program became problematic. From my recollection, I think those that have been employed in that program have grown in the municipality. Some have been fast-tracked, and many of them are sitting into supervisory and management positions, and they, together with politicians, have been part of the process of maladministration and corruption, which is now being seriously addressed. But Zaid, I want to bring you back into discussion. You're doing a lot of feeding projects with We Feed, and some of it we collaborate with you, particularly the big feeding projects, that we do in Eid, and Ashura projects are coming up next week, and we'll be working closely with Muslims for Humanity and other organizations to roll out feeding programs. But I think a lot of the corporates are keen, as you said, to train our people to be employed rather than just feeding them. But the need for feeding is also necessary. I know your organization is doing feeding daily, and you've indicated during the crises of COVID, and I know how long that ran for, and also subsequently the floods and the unrest. We got involved. We didn't even have rest, As soon as this one finished, the next one started. And I recall during COVID, when there was a total lockdown, everybody was shut, including the shops and supermarkets, bakeries, and what have you. Government did not think about, they said certain essential hospitals and all will stay open, but they didn't consider who's going to feed the nation, and that's where we had to emerge. And I recall when COVID took place, and I was then still the CEO of this organization, and I realized if we're going to sit at home and everybody is going to ask for help, who is going to help them? And particularly we in the media, we had to disseminate information. So I decided to brave the situation the next morning and drive my car, because obviously the cops were on the road to stop whoever is driving. So I said, stuff everybody, there's a community or humanitarian need out there, let me drive. And I was the only guy in this building, and I opened the doors, walked into my office, and I'm sitting there and pondering what to do. Because I said, in the time of a crisis, some leaders have to emerge. And then I found a few board members, and I said, listen, we have to do something. This whole setup was closed, and I located, I think, one of the technical staff. I'm not sure whether it was you, and then we decided to open up the studio and get the news read and pick up information for wherever we can. Zach, I'm not sure whether you joined us that time during COVID when the studio was locked and there were no technicians. And I said to myself, the pandemic, they called it, was spreading so fast. People were scared. People were dying throughout the world. Now, being a financial man like yourself, Zahid, I was looking at the drop in the share market, how prices of various shares were dropping, and that was the start of a huge decline. On the one side, our eyes were there to see why is it declining and where will it settle. But on the other side, days were passing and people had no food. People had the money, wealthy guys, no bread, no milk. And then Muslims for Humanity, together with a few, got together. So while I was involved in this project, I sat back, I found our chair, and I said, let's do something. He said, but you can't move because everything is locked down. I said, we'll have to do something. And then we realized you have to get permits. And it was a very challenging time, those couple of months, or more than a few months, because I did a whole series of programs on COVID. Some people were of the view it's a load of rubbish. Others were of the view it's serious. Ahmad Al-Qadi was full of COVID patients. People were dying by the dozens daily. The news was flooded throughout the world. We can't forget. It was a catastrophe. It was an emergency. And few NGOs were operating during that time. And many people mustn't forget. So no sooner that settled after a year or two, because President Ramaphosa always came in with a sad face and said, I'm extending the lockdown from full lockdown, I'm bringing it down to lockdown 5. He had it there for a long time. 4, even those were stringent lockdowns. You couldn't even work. So as an NGO, we were concerned about the lack of funding to take care of our expenses. And obviously there was a fund that was created which we had to tap, and it took time to get, and there was corruption there as well. Perhaps you just want to briefly comment on the challenges we had during that time. And before you can settle, it was after the floods. And with the floods, with the considerable damage, and you said you'll be involved with projects like, boreholes and repairing schools and then housing. That was my game in local government. And I know what it involves to go and reconstruct the house, because we know in places like Amlazi, Chatsworth, Phoenix, etc., it was extensive damage and funding was required, and they had emergency fund. But no sooner that settled, then we had the unrest. And again, there was a kind of a lockdown and you couldn't move, but there was no factories that opened because of the burning of these various factories, and a shortage ran. So those were challenging months. Perhaps you just want to comment how you all managed that process, Zahid, because that was really a humanitarian list of projects that had to take place, and you had to have that sympathy in your heart to help people, because people who were sort of well off and had the funds couldn't access commodities, which goes to show what happens to individuals when there's a calamity. And it reminds me now of what's happening in Gaza, the kind of atrocities that are taking place and the lack of humanitarian aid. And added to all that is the amount of people that are dying, children, and the manner in which they're dying. So this is really a humanitarian crisis we're facing in the last few years, and it's an apt time that you responded to this process, because we were in it, and I've been in it since the time you've been involved. So no sooner you think you're settling, something else crops up. So Zaid, maybe you want to comment, maybe more is required of the kind of humanitarian need we are facing.
Yeah. Yunus, you asked a very, very important question. And I think, yes, more is needed, but how we do it needs to be rethought of. So let's start firstly with addressing and unpacking what you mentioned about
I said a lot, but I thought that came to my mind. Let's just unpack it and see, are we prepared for something else that may come?
Yeah, no, I think we have to. We have to be resilient to be prepared for something else. But just coming back to your point, I think, inshallah, you know what KZN went through, hopefully we were cleansed, right? We had COVID, we had the looting, we had the flooding. It was one.
And we got all the political challenges now.
All the political challenges as well. And I think, I must say, I'm not only a proud South African, but I'm a proud KZN citizen, because we are so resilient. All right. So from the funding perspective, I think, you can't take it away from our Muslim community. I mean, we really pour out with regards to helping people. And you talked about Muslims for Humanity, and it's a very important point. It talked about finances. The formation of Muslims for Humanity was about coordinating efforts across NPOs and stretching the donor funds, so that there's no duplication of effort. And that's the reason why it was actually formed. And it talks to finances.
And I interviewed, Shoaib Musa and
Zubair as well,
who were the kingpins. And they just gave up all the sort of manufacturing needs to say, we have to focus on this because that's a need of the day. Accessing bakeries to get breads baked, milk provided, the basic necessities. And people were queuing up here in Ansaar and other places and other areas to say, I need my couple of loaves of bread and milk, because you couldn't sustain. I mean, we were going for weeks without these type of facilities.
So how was Muslims for Humanity actually started, right? So when we actually formed We Feed SA, the first thing we did was form an NPC, because we realized that amongst our friends, we won't be able to raise that amount of funds. So now we're going to be sitting with Amana. I told you 185,000 and equivalent a day we were spending. So we formalized it so that there could be accountability and transparency in terms of what we were doing with the Amana. So I phoned Zubair Musa, and Zubair is a friend of mine. And I told him, Zubair, what are you allocating? What he says, Zahid, I've got money for you guys, but I need you to answer this one question for me. He says, how are you avoiding the duplication of effort? I told him that, I am working with a few organizations, including that time Al-Ansar as well, and we are coordinating our effort, but I know there is some level of duplication, but I have an idea around it. He came in on a Saturday. We chatted around Wednesday. He came in on the Saturday. We had a meeting in my office. We were based out in Stamford Hill. And the very next day, Sunday, we brought in all our big businessmen from Tradeport, from the Maters, a whole of people were there, Babu Seeded, etc. It was a nice, good group of people with sincere intent And that's how we formed Muslims for Humanity. Really about helping organization NPOs coordinate the effort. In regards to the post looting, the bread and milk situation, there was a logistical marvel. 350,000 loaves of bread and 350,000 liters of milk in 4 days. And after that, we distributed 10,000 hampers. And the money that we accumulated was north of 23 million rands in that short space of time. And the reality is, yes, we as Muslims actually have a big heart. But sometimes, I believe we lack the strategy in terms of how we spend our money. I mean, we just passed the elections, and we couldn't even raise R1 million to support parties that we believe will actually kind of brought value to us as the Muslim community. So we need to kind of re-strategize in how we do it. And alhamdulillah, I know recently there has been a meeting of minds and people are looking to the future. So in terms of humanitarian aid, definitely is the need. It's the how, all right? It's how do we, Yunus, if I tell you about your personal investment, right, you're really careful about saying, I don't want to erode my capital.
Correct.
I want to use whatever returns I get on my capital to actually spend on myself. So too should your social investment be. Take your money and invest it in education, invest it in empowerment, because that's a sustainable solution. Yes, we do feed. We don't feed like before. Then we had to feed in terms of the volume because no one was working, right? But we feed in specific soup kitchens that we've kind of created all around KZN. But what we do is we monitor that community. If we go into a community, feed 500 people, and the very next year I'm feeding 500 people, I've done an injustice to that community. I need to reduce that number. So I'd grab a few people, put them on different courses, CMT courses, cooking courses, etc., and try to empower them. Alhamdulillah, we've been successful. Not at the rate that we like. It's not an easy process. But if we've taken 10 people out of the communities, 10 people that didn't have a job before, you multiply it by average family size of 5, you have 50 people. So my point is also the feeding. The feeding as well needs to be nutritional food, not acne. Right? Acne got its place, time and place, but not every single day.
Acne is more for the Indian areas and our charos.
Yeah, and then plus the soup kitchens, what's nice about it, you ensuring that community is fed every day.
Correct.
And also I'm working on nutrition programs to make sure that children between the ages of 0 to 5 get the right nutrition for physical and neuro development, because that will affect them. That will actually affect them into the future in terms of their education, etc.
Correct.
So my point that I'm trying to make here is that yes, there is definitely more required in terms of humanitarian kind of organization to support, but do it more on a collaborative basis and be clever about how you spend your money. Spend it on sustainable solutions.
Correct. Right? Zaid, we're going to take a short news break. Before the news break, I just wanted to touch briefly on, the unrest. I recall again during the unrest, the kind of burning and looting that was taking place and the fires that were going off, and large supply chain warehouses were on fire. And obviously that was during the time when Jacob Zuma, who's in inverted commas the leader of the party called MK, and this is where Mansour's famous subject comes in, that the GNU and what's going to be MK's role. We're going to chat about that after the news. I recall I came in again that morning, and that was the third calamity that hit us. And I realized we needed basic necessities and bread and milk. I came to know that NMJ, I was part of the board of NMJ, was a nerve center for distribution. And I was quite pleased that our brothers were involved there. And Zubair and Shoaib were in the help, and I came and interviewed him here. When I came in the morning and I realized, we have a problem again and there's nobody around, I phoned our chair, Ashfaq Dawood, and he was in Joburg. And I can, Ash, we got a major problem here now. So I don't know if Ash is listening. And what you need, that says, you guys in Gauteng are fine, but KZN, we got a crisis here because the guys got no food at home. And they can't buy food because every supermarket is closed. And those that decided to open have got queues and they hardly got stocks. And the prices have escalated. So look at what you want. Look at whatever you can offer. Hey, look, I'm going to get you 56 tons of goods, 3 truckloads, but I need to establish how I'm going to get them to you from Gauteng. And then obviously that helped NMJ because they were getting bread and milk, and Shoaib and all were trying to resource other stuff. So just think about, we'll briefly chat about that, and then we're going to get into our subject on GNU, and I'd like you to comment on it. Inshallah, we'll take the break for the news, and we'll briefly chat. The reason why I'm mentioning we need to remind our listeners about that is because Mansoor Sheikh has brought to our attention that all's not smooth with this GNU as we speak. And MK, if they wake up from their lull, we could have another problem. And KZN will be the sort of hub of activity because the majority of them are based here. So we make du'as and we ask the Ummah to make du'as that we don't have another Fort calamity here.
Yes.
So inshallah, after the news break, we'll continue with our discussion.
Teaching you something new every day. Radio Al-Ansar.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al-Ansar News.
Making news this hour, 3rd of July, the news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. A search continues for missing Mkababa toddler. Good evening, America Monina. The search continues today for a missing 2-year-old Mkababa girl. A renegade search and rescue Dawn Gounden says little Isipele Nyangola was with her friends before she disappeared yesterday. Isipele was wearing a pink tracksuit and had no shoes on. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Tenjiswe Ngwaba says a missing person docket has now been opened in Nkomazi. The docket was then transferred to Mlazi Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Unit for investigation. Police say anyone with information on the little girl's whereabouts is urged to contact Nkomazi Police on 039-973-6108 or the Crime Stop number 08600 10 111. Electricity has been restored in some areas after a massive power outage plunged parts of Pietermaritzburg into darkness earlier in the week. The Pietermaritzburg Magistrate and High Courts, Msondizi municipal offices, the Premier's office, City Hall, and a host of other businesses and government buildings were plunged into darkness, with many forced to close for the day as of yesterday. Msondizi municipality says cables at the city centre taxi rank substation were vandalized and burnt, resulting in the widespread power outage. Ward 30 Councillor Rachel Subia says, however, electricity has been restored in northern areas. This comes after residents in the northern areas were left without electricity more than 24 hours. More news as the deadlock in negotiations to form a government of national or provincial government in Gauteng continues. Residents in the province are concerned about the knock-on effect it's going to have on service delivery. The cabinet announcement has been postponed twice as the ANC and DA disagree over the makeup of the executive council in Gauteng. The parties accuse each other of negotiating in bad faith. The ANC Secretary General Figile Balula has this to say on the deadlock in negotiations.
I've got confidence in Panyaza. He can negotiate with anybody. I don't have to be there to police him. He understands the strategic framework and everything of what was agreed. He's a member of the NEC. So he understands what we have to do. And the members of our negotiating team were actually there. So they still reached a deadlock. So the engagement is there, but you can't have an open-ended process. And so that is why in our letter we said, at 2 o'clock today, we must hear from them, but equally, not arrogantly, respectively so, we will move forward without the DA in terms of how to establish government. And that's what is going to happen going forward. And the DA told us yesterday, even in the negotiations, that they are prepared to go back to the benches. If this is a deal breaker for them, then they will go. But if not, we'll move together.
Police have arrested one person in connection with the kidnapping of a Portuguese businessman in Johannesburg. At least 12 businessmen and 6 students have been rescued by the police in the past 6 months. In the latest incident, a 49-year-old man was recovered from a home in Snake Park, Soweto, where he was being held captive. A 39-year-old suspect, believed to be part of a kidnapping syndicate, was arrested in Tenfontein, Johannesburg. And finally, in your international story, it has been a week of relentless Israeli bombing in Gaza's city of Sujaiya neighborhood as the armed wing of Hamas fights fierce battles against Israeli soldiers in Rafah. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrike kills 12 Palestinians, including 9 members of a family in a designated safe zone, while they followed Israeli evacuation orders to leave eastern Khan Yunus. Your weather, 20 degrees, cloudy conditions. A quick reminder of our top story. A search continues today for a missing 2-year-old girl in Kebab. That's the news.
This hadith is brought to you by Continental Butcher Baker Deli. Quality, freshness, and value. Our promise to you since 1992.
حديث a day قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل مسكر حرام. All intoxicants are haram and unlawful. Intoxicants are those things that cause a person to lose his mind and intelligence. Intoxicants may also be in the form of drugs or in a liquid form, such as wine and other types of alcohol.
If you're looking for a delicious selection of freshly made baked goods, decadent deli treats, and succulent meats, there's no need to chop around anymore. Continental Butcher Baker Deli offers an award-winning service, presenting exceptional quality at competitive prices. Superb choice grade lamb, beef, and chicken, mouth-watering homemade processed meats and gourmet marinades, and scrumptious baked goodies. Quality, freshness, and a money-back guarantee. Continental Butcher Baker Deli in Argyle Road. Visit continentaldeli.co.za.
Call 031-208-0951. This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport.
Kenfield Auto. मेरे नबी प्यारे नबी सुन्नत तेरी दुनिया दी.
Sunnah a day. The following dua should be recited before entering the bathroom. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal-khaba'ith. O Allah, I seek your protection from the male and female devil. Enter the bathroom with the left foot.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto.
Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031-207-2399. Kenfield Auto.
People of Palestine need your support now. Africa Muslims Agency is on the ground, already providing food, medication, and emergency supplies in Gaza. Donate any amount to Heal Palestine at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Ansaar, Durban 90.4 and Petermaritzburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Ansaar, keeping you informed.
اللهم صل على المصطفى
to News in Focus live on Radio Ansaar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Petermarisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were talking about the response to the various challenges that took place during COVID, the floods and indeed the unrest and the sort of opportunity to feed those that we need. And Zahid spoke about, the creation of jobs, for the unemployed. But, we're talking today, about the GNU cabinet and implications. And as we speak, I think the Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, is busy announcing his cabinet. He mentioned early on, before the news briefing, that he's definitely going to announce his cabinet tonight, because there were 2 consecutive postponements caused by disagreements with DA over composition of the executive. Lesufi says that they will be working with all the parties in the Gauteng legislature. But the breaking news further was that the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says that while progress has been made in discussions between ANC, Gauteng province and DA, the parties are yet to reach agreement. No party has walked away. Negotiations will continue. But Panyaza said he will try and announce his cabinet, which I believe it's live. So there are indications coming through that the DA will not be part of the Gauteng executive led by the controversial Panyaza Lesufi. To put it in simple terms, ANC, GP want to be able to loot, plunder and steal in peace like they have been doing so many years. This is what some critics are saying. Service delivery will collapse, even more major trouble looming for Gauteng. So time will tell us which way that is going. Now, major confusion erupts at the ANC press conference where the Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said emphatically that ANC will not work with MK Party and EFF in Gauteng because they don't form part of GNU. Panyaza Lesufi, in front of Fikile Mbalula, said he will work with MK and EFF. Total confusion and chaos. Is Panyaza Lesufi in open warfare with the ANC leadership? Time will tell. So I believe that is coming up live on the television stations, etc. We'll wait for feedback. We may take some of it live, but I just want to continue with our discussion briefly with Zahid on the issue of the response, of the communities and indeed various NGOs during the unrest. The reason why I want to conclude on our discussions is because early on we had an informal discussion with some politicians, and they were concerned that with MK withdrawing its case, with the IEC, are they prepared to come on board? Will there be stability in the GNU, or will Gauteng be running it alone? Time will tell. We'll discuss. Zaid, what's your take on this matter? After, obviously, during the unrest, you mentioned businesses, donors responded. The various communities were very generous in donating, and compliments to the Muslim community. We responded. Now we have to be vigilant and also be resilient to ensure that in these difficult times, particularly MK being predominantly in KZN, are we prepared for difficulties and challenges here, particularly on the NGOs responding like the way we did in these 3 challenging times?
Yeah. So Yunus, the challenges, the what, those are unpredictable, and that's the reality. Whether it is political unrest, civil unrest, or natural disasters, it's how we respond to it, and that's what you're trying to drive in this discussion. The reality is that the successes with regards to our response during the KZN flooding and the KZN looting was a organized command center. Where we kind of forged a command center and all the NPOs collaborated. And you mentioned Ansaar was also part of those initiatives. The recent Tonga tornado is also a testament of it, and it's getting better. Alhamdulillah, it's getting better. Where we formed a command center, we don't get involved in emergency relief as we FIDESI, but because we had employed people in those areas, we could actually bring them all together into Tonga from Phoenix, Verulam, and help with the cleanup of the rubble and clean the pathways for emergency vehicles as well. And when I got on site on the Tuesday, There was Alimdad, Darul Ihsan, Gift of the Givers, a whole lot of organizations there. And then the very same afternoon, we actually forged a command center and we coordinated the effort. And I must say it worked quite well. There was no duplication of effort. There was no emotional response to it or limited emotional response to it. And the monies that the donors were spending were actually targeted in a specific area. It was a bringing together of other religious groups as well, not only the Muslims, which is fantastic. And also we could hold local government to account, disaster management to account. And we worked quite well with them because everybody was working collaboratively in that manner. So my perspective on this, Yunus, is that these command centers, these collaborative approaches to these things are the way to go. Because we don't know what the event is going to be, it's how we respond to it.
Now, just to conclude on that issue, this afternoon we met with the CEO of Al Baraka Bank, and prior to that we have been meeting as Al Ansaar. And the CEO, Shabir Chauhan, has stressed the need to monitor and support government structures, particularly the municipalities in terms of service delivery. We know most municipalities have collapsed, and our politician will come in on that later on in the program. But, you know, I know you're a director of Al Baraka, and the CEO is passionate about getting municipalities back to normality. And we know the GNU was intending, the DA mentioned in a lot of their comments that I think that Tony Leon has mentioned that they keen in ensuring that ministers are not allowed to if they're not allowed to exercise their authority in the cabinet positions, the party may step away because they want to make sure they rescue South Africa. Now, Shabir was mentioning that we got to work closely with the Tikweni municipality, which is the big metro in Durban. And I know I come from that space, that they're nearing administration because Section 154 is in place. Mm-hmm. Dr. Michael Sutcliffe and Cassius have been appointed and they're going to start the process. So they're going to have to really relook at the priorities. So from the perspective of the Al Baraka Bank, because they committed and want to work closely to improve service delivery. What's your thoughts on that situation, Zahid?
Without a doubt, that is definitely the way to go. I mean, I've seen, being part of the board of Al Baraka Bank, I've seen them work quite closely on community projects together with Etikweni as well, because it's in the best interest that our city runs well. And I must say that having actually gauged that approach from Shabir, and Shabir is a phenomenal individual as a CEO. Alhamdulillah, we actually celebrated the best results in the 35th
yes.
that we ever produced. And it's because of his leadership. And obviously, we got a very powerful board as well, with Yunus Suleiman being the chair. And I think you interviewed him last week as well. I used the same approach with regards to the employment project as well. And the first thing I did was I knew there was going to be resistance on the ground when we come in at the private sector to actually do this type of work of what the municipality should be doing. I went straight to the mayor. I set up a meeting with Mayor Kawunda at that time and his HODs, and it worked fantastically well. The partnership worked well. We worked with DSW, Parks and Recreation, etc. What had happened there was they needed to be supplemented with the capacity, but also the government employees, the Etikweni employees, pull up their socks, if I have to say that, because we were doing the work and they wanted to actually ensure that, they actually contributed to the whole thing. So it was a fantastic partnership. So my point that I want to make is Al Baraka's approach to local government should be the approach that every business should have in terms of working with government rather than working against government to make things work in KZN.
No, that's fantastic. And I know it's very important that we keep them on their toes. The problem, as when I spoke to Mike Sutcliffe, and he probably will join me in the forthcoming weeks, on his vision to improve service delivery in eThekwini, is there's a lot of concern about the current management personnel that may not be qualified for the job. How do you deal with them? Because most of these municipalities are highly unionized, and over the years, because of cadre deployment and employment of PALs into positions, these people became quite comfortable and over and above earning their salaries. And I spoke about this in many programs. Many of them have been basically involved with contractors in corrupt activities. And that's outstanding. And to deal with the outstanding disciplinary action and criminal action against these employees is what this particular team in terms of Section 154 is tasked with. And that's a challenge they've got. So having said that, I think what you mentioned, is the need to support the municipalities in improving service delivery. And it's crucial because really our communities out there need better service delivery. And as our friend Hassan always points out, you need, your value for money. Otherwise, you're paying rates and taxes and what you're getting in return. But I want to bring in, one of our colleagues into the discussion. I know I gave him some time to rest, Mohamed Ayaz Carrim. He hails from Gauteng, and he arrived this morning in an early morning flight, so the fellow is nice and tired. He's the head of production at Radio Ansaar, and he does a lot of political contacts and interviews for various radio stations, but his passion is with Ansaar. So this is the first time the fellow is in the studio, and he's charmed at what he sees here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus, Mohamed Ayaz Carrim.
Wa alaikum salam, Uncle Yunus. It's great to finally be here. I've been on the show before. I produced the show for you before, but I think finally speaking on it from the studio, and I have been here before. I did Souk 2 years ago, and I took over Zahid's show. Okay. But I think it's different now. That is not in a position of where I am now. But I mean, this GNU for me is fascinating because tomorrow, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but I'm going to say it. Tomorrow we have an interview on the social network on my show, where we will be interviewing Samantha Graham, who is the Deputy Minister of Electricity. Now, I'm just putting it out there.
That's at national level,
right? Cabinet Minister. It's her first interview.
So you're going to ask her, will load shedding stop or will it continue?
But let's be honest. When was the last time we had load shedding? And she now I've known this woman when she was the Shadow Minister of Electricity for the DA. And she's always spoken highly of Ramakgopa. I can't lie. I also think he's quite a smart man. And the fact that she was willing to, I think it would be maybe in invasion of privacy. I would play her voice note, but I basically said to her, now that you're a big shot and you in cabinet, don't forget me. And she said, how can I forget you when you never forgot me and you always supported me? And the thing is, we need to understand that the DA is an organization that has a Zionist entity and has ties, but people are people, right? Yes, individuals correct. Are individuals, and we can't paint with such broad brush strokes. So look, let's see how the interview goes. Personally, I think she's phenomenal. She's always addressed the issues with regards to load shedding when we were really suffering. I mean, I feel like load shedding is a thing of the past at this point. I don't know where they're getting the diesel from to burn and like how they're burning it, but when you look at this cabinet, it's interesting because I also actually interviewed Hanif Hendricks yesterday on another show. And he's our now Minister of Social Development.
Deputy Minister, yes.
And it's interesting because we've known Hanif for a while, right? He's somebody who is very familiar with us. But I feel like now I don't know if that position was given is like I'm glad that they were given that position. It feels a little bit performative and a little bit bureaucratic. A lot of these positions do feel that way.
But listen, the cabinet, if you look at the appointments after a long deliberation and haggling, etc., the DA, as usual, wanting more positions, and they ended up with 6 plus 5 deputies, 11, and then the other small parties got 1.
And after that, she complained, it wasn't enough.
and IFP got a few, and even Al Jama got 1, and other smaller parties got a few. And these were more compromised because what Ramaphosa wanted was a government of national duty with cabinet positions. And we know Gayton McKenzie, an ex-prisoner, he was quite humorous in his swearing in, and he mentioned a few things. But, he threatened that if you don't get a position, he's going to walk out. So people are saying it's not about positions. But, where I'm coming in now is everybody is saying it's a very big, very bloated. But will government of national unity be better? That's a question I want to ask you.
I want to ask you the same thing because it is bloated, right? But the thing is, it's bloated for a reason. It's clearly bloated in order to accommodate.
You want to ask me the question, I'll give you the answer. I strongly believe...
I'll tell you.
I strongly believe that if you're going to bring in quality ministers who are going to focus on service delivery, forget about the political affiliations. What has happened in the last 10 years or maybe 30 years, a massive decline in service delivery, increase in corruption, increase in maladministration, and you're going to give it a try.
Right.
Now, the DA, no matter what people say, we're going to forget about Zionism and other things because that is a separate subject for discussion.
I agree.
I think the ANC red line the ICJ issue, and they can't negotiate and discuss. Right. And the appointment to those positions are ANC, so they wouldn't tamper with that.
Right.
But in terms of service delivery, the markets have responded, and that's why I'm going to bring Hassan in just now. The markets are positive that, and what Toli Leon is saying, that listen, we don't want any interference. We want to do what we have to do. In other words, we want to rescue South Africa. And that's what John Steenhuisen says. So in my opinion, it's a try. It's something that we must be optimistic. We must support. We're going to get the MKs of this world and the EFS being obstructionists. But obviously, MK was part of the ANC
I don't know
in the
if
past.
Obstructionist is fair. I feel like that's a bit. I think the argument is that there was a ENCA newsreader who actually got fired. He went on TV the other day and he said, "Why is it that we as Black South Africans who are educated, who are now successful on our own, can't come together and be like, you know what, let's put the past in the past?" Because essentially the MK, EFF, and ANC are all.
But listen, while you're there, I'm quite glad to comment that when MK got sworn in, and John Slope, obviously, whatever problems he has, a lot of them mentioned, we haven't come here to fight. We've come here to work, and we've come here to assist. So time will tell whether they will.
But this man got fired because he said, as successful Black South Africans, we've come together and said, nah, man, we need a white man to come in and give us some structure. And he got fired from Johan Rupert's network, right? To be honest, the real president of South Africa.
I want to, just to help us with the answer, because obviously, and Zahid will tell you, ultimately, you got to have funds to do anything. Yeah, whether you're managing government, local affairs, or local government, or whatever, you don't have funds, you stuff. The ratepayers and taxpayers are key, and also foreign assistance. Hassan, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus once again.
Wa alaikum
salam. Last week we expanded the rand. You told me below 18 rand, now it's gone to 1840 or whatever. Share markets responded positively. There was a bit of a lull because of the delay in the announcement of the cabinet, but however, they've responded again. What's the current situation?
Sure. So if you look at, markets not necessarily only dictated by what happens in South Africa. So globally, you've had some strengthening of the US dollar per se. You've had oil prices have been fairly volatile as well over the past couple of days because of hurricane expectations in the West Indies and some of those islands as well. I think a couple of key points. Net, or most of the key comments coming out from major commentators and the like. I think most people are relatively happy with what's the composition. Obviously, bloatedness and the like, that's we can talk about that forever. Whether deputy ministers really have effective say. It was a huge I remember we went from 30 ministers and 36 deputies to now what you call is 30-odd ministers and 42 deputy ministers. So that's a crazy amount. But again, it's a compromise. But the key is the appointments of some of the ministers. Disappointments, obviously, Minister of Defense. God knows why we have Anzi Mosheka. She's a well-qualified, in terms of her qualifications, in terms of her degree and all of that. But you just have to see a track record in terms of basic education. It was an absolute failure.
So you had nowhere else to put her, and they chose that portfolio.
Unfortunately, it seems to be that seems to be the case. But be it as it may, she's, of all the disappointments, we would say that the fact that she's still in the cabinet as a minister.
Deputy might do the job.
But deputy
he was the minister.
But why was Pando not brought back? Why was Nalini Pando not brought back?
We'll discuss that shortly.
Sure. Yeah. So I think if you look at a couple of the other key areas. So again, the economic cluster remains with the ANC, and that is one of the most important
the
things.
Foreign relations cluster.
Foreign relations and economic cluster remains with the ANC.
Well,
that was key.
The DA
pushed and they pushed deputy per se. But at the end of the day, so long as the minister is the ANC led.
So the deputy is a DA Indian individual, I believe.
Sure, yeah.
Correct.
Is he a qualified guy?
I'm not familiar. I think he is, but I'm not sure
he's very smart. He's very articulate, very smart.
Okay, so that will bolster the finance sector.
But in general, I think the finance they've made good calls in terms of who they've appointed there, and I think people are just one area where there's a lot of skepticism and the guys are not too happy. But you cannot blame the president for not appointing him, was Gwede Mantashe. Gwede Mantashe in this current position, which has been there, he's obviously been a stumbling block in terms of with the private sector. But anyway, Gwede is a strong ally of the president. He was not going anywhere. And the fact of the matter is minerals and resources remains a key element for South Africa and the key element for the ANC. And Gwede, being a strong ally, will be maintained there. So that, I think, market, if there was one other area where the market is a bit not too happy about, has been around Gwede. But I think by and large, if you look at the fact that what you call finance, they're more than happy. The fact that you've got, what you call Park Stow has come in. He's got a decent track record. So I think there's areas where markets and most commentators are pretty happy. The key is now to hit the ground running and ensure that you get execution. Remember, the ANC, one thing you have to hand it to them over the last 30 years, when it came to policies, they masters at it. We've had one of the best policies across most of we can argue about NHI and a few others, but by and large, if you look at most policies on the economy and the like, we've got fantastic policies. It's execution. We need to. So this current cabinet should not now reinvent the wheel and focus again on introducing new policies and laws and the like. There's, by and large, we've got a lot of the laws, and there are going to be new laws coming through but we need execution. Execution is key, and that's what the market will focus on longer term. While you're going to get the seesaw that's going to happen over the next couple of weeks and the next couple of months, that's going to happen, and it's not necessarily going to be driven by what's happening in South Africa. Remember, we are part of the global market. We are a small part of it. Our currency moves 80% of it, 70 to 80% by and large, a lot of the time, is what's happening with the US dollar. It impacts us there. But when you see sustainability in terms of momentum of economic growth, in terms of some momentum in terms of business confidence, in terms of momentum in terms of our current account improving and the like, that creates sustainable growth, that creates sustainability in terms of our currency, and importantly, FDI. Do not be surprised that come the next 12, 18, 24 months, we'll see an uptick in terms of FDI starting to come through in this country. Do not be surprised. The likes of Amazon are already, and we talked about it, they're already spending, but there's already announcements by others that they're looking at, South Africa is piquing the interest again. Remember, in the last 10 years, in the financial sector, that means your bonds and your equity markets, we had 1.5 trillion sold by foreigners. 1.5 trillion. That's a massive amount. What that impacts? That impacts your current accounts, but it impacts your currency sustainably over a period of time. Remember, 10 years ago, when 2008, when Jacob Zuma came in and the like, our currency was pretty strong. If you look at it, 7 rand, 8 rand, we were at a point in time. And then gradually over time, what they look at, two things. We look at the fiscal stability of this country. And that is our debt to GDP is the most important factor. And then secondly, looking at our current accounts in terms of our exports versus our imports. Now, our debt to GDP has been the most worsening and the biggest concern for this country over the last 10 years. And that's a key focus, I think, for this government, not government, for the finance minister in particular. He's very concerned about that. And he's trying to rein in as much as he can in terms of expenditure to help ease our debt to GDP going forward. The second point I want to highlight is that if we see an improvement in terms of FDI, and you see an improvement in terms of our logistics, remember who we got, the Minister of Transport and the like. There's Barbara Creasy. She's got a very good track record, and the markets are very confident in her ability as well. If you get improvements in our rail, in our ports, and in our what you call road, the impact that will have in terms of the exports of minerals and the trading of goods has a phenomenal impact in terms of our GDP growth. We must not underestimate that. We talked earlier, Ayaz talked about when last we had load shedding. It is now about 105 days, or maybe somewhere on there.
Right, yeah.
You know what 105 days has done in terms of the small and medium enterprises and their businesses over that period? Year on year, you will see just for this quarter, the second quarter where we've had no GDP, compared to Lawa, we had a terrible first quarter in terms of GDP. But the momentum that you see in the second quarter year on year, just because of load shedding impact, would be a positive impact coming through. Bear that in mind, especially in sectors that are impacted or very reliant on energy. Yes, we had a tough 2023. We had a tough 2021. We had a tough 2020 as well. Only 2022, you could say we had some positive impact coming through. 2024, 2025, if we get some decent momentum in terms of logistics, in terms of energy, more stability in terms of electricity supply, we will have decent economic growth starting to come through.
I want to bring you back, Mohamed Ayaz. Sorry I cut you there. I just wanted him to just add from a financial perspective, these additions to the cabinet from the various other parties, including the ANC, and the strategic appointment of people. And he mentioned Minister of Transport, Minister of Agriculture. Don't talk about Minister of Sport now, Gaten McKenzie.
Gaten is that was, I think that
now
was
these additions,
right?
do you foresee this will bolster service delivery and the economy? Because I want to bring in Zahid also, being a chartered accountant and a financial, sort of fundi.
I don't know. I feel like it was
comment.
a missed opportunity there. With like they gave Dion George forestry and fisheries, I think. And I mean, Dion George is such a smart guy. I've spoken to him many times.
And what is he good at?
He was the DA Shadow Minister of Finance.
However, listen, the DA was fighting for that position.
They would never give
felt
it.
that the existing guy was doing a good piece of work, Enoch. So they felt bring a deputy who is, this.
Like Ashok Sharupen, I think he's like impressive. Look, he's young.
Was he a DA Shadow Minister of Finance somewhere?
He's the Deputy Federal. So he's Helen Zella's basically deputy.
Yes.
Helen Zella, I don't know. I think at this point somebody needs to like take her out behind the bar and shoot. Can't believe I said that on radio, but I mean, it's like the woman, it just puts her foot in her mouth consistently. It's like
she's gonna come for you, yeah.
Listen, I have her number. I can phone her now, and I'll say it again. The problem is here that you were trying to convince the people of South Africa that we need to vote for you, and we are not the NP in disguise. Your behavior is showing me that I want everything or nothing. It's like if you think you're going to encourage South Africans in the next election to vote for just the DA government, I promise you it's never going to happen. Your greediness in these negotiations has shown us that you give the white man your small finger and they want to take the whole hand. And that's exactly what this has shown us here. Like the positions,
I want you to comment on the Minister of Home Affairs. There's a lot of debate
what's his
around.
name? Is it Dean McPherson?
They say he's a Jewish guy.
Oh no,
What
Leon
will he do?
Schreiber.
Yes.
Actually, gosh, I don't know. I know him personally.
He says he's gonna sort that department out. All these big queues and
Look, Aaron
corruption that's going
Matoleri
on.
was somebody who I always thought was quite smart, right? I watched some of his interviews but he's had some issues now. I think they took him out very strategically because of the ZEP permits, right? Now, I personally was very against the decision with the ZEP permits because, I mean, I know lots of Zimbabwean nationals who really contribute to this country and it really affected a lot of them. Aaron Matoleri was like, it's like, why choose that hill to die on? You know what I'm saying? Like somebody who's had a positive impact, why choose that hill to die on? I think they brought in Leon. He's had a controversial time in Swane. Also somebody I've known for like a while now. I think he can do a lot. I don't want to give too much confidence in these the white men because we can't say for sure, right? We'll have to see. Like it's going to come down to logistics. And it's
Mohamed
more than just
Ayaz,
a leader.
I want to pose a simple question to you for the benefit of our simple listeners out there. They heard about the GNU.
Yeah.
They firmly believe that Cyril Ramaphosa, being an astute statesman and a pragmatic president, has wisely selected the cabinet and he balanced this cabinet. Now, a lot of critics may say he sold the ANC out and what have you, but he's a multi-billionaire and he said to himself, how am I going to fix South Africa? And I have to be unbiased now, but I have to balance my cabinet. And a lot of political analysts have said he's done that. So he selected, some good guys. He compromised with a couple of guys. If you tell he compromised with Gaten and McKenzie, he'll tell you, no, I deserve a bigger portfolio. But be that as it may, the DA is threatening, and Tony Leon said that if they don't allow us to do our work, which is right, then we'll move out. But do you firmly believe, in simple terms, will this GNU work for the better of South Africa?
Do you feel like it's really a GNU, or is this more of a super coalition?
Optimistic that after much of a struggle, 30 years into the ruling party administering, and they've declined. I won't say they failed, they declined.
You know, my fear...
And the economic sector has reacted accordingly. Now, we got to give an opportunity for the GNU to be tested, and as Hassan is saying, give it 12 months and let's see the outcomes. Markets are positively, and I'll bring in Zaid just now to check, are they really positively responding, or is this a sort of a makeshift thing? Tell me, in your opinion, based on your understanding of the political scenario, having dealt with a lot of politicians, and we've got a politician here, and he's going to comment on it shortly.
He's dealt with all of them.
Right. What is your view? Give it a chance. Will it work? Because, I mean, the DA has come in boots and all and said, let's rescue South Africa.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Because I feel like the fear there is that if this is extremely successful, it's going to play very much into that white savior complex where it's going to be like, oh, we needed the white man to save us again, right? And that might not necessarily be the case. I think...
well, that's a risk the ANC took.
Right, but the thing is, I think...
and they had no choice. And they had no choice.
They had no choice. No, they had a choice. But
the other parties were not coming to...
They chose white monopoly capital when they didn't have to.
Hold on. They offered MK and EFF to come on board. And those guys said, we'll come on board in condition you exclude certain parties.
The day before Ramaphosa announced his cabinet, Malema did approach him. And he said, squash this deal. We'll do a new deal. Leave out the DA. We'll do it with MK and us, EFF. And there was a way Ramaphosa could have gone. However...
No, but Ramaphosa gave reasons why he didn't accept that.
No, we understand why that he would
coming
never
late
have.
to the party, but we'll discuss that on another occasion because there's a for and against for that. But the question I want you to answer to our listeners now, are you sort of the view
positive
that it will be successful or no? Because I'm not.
No, I'm positive. I'm not going to sit here and say that I feel like, oh,
are you doubtful? Are you doubtful it's going to work?
No, not at all. Because at the end of the day, like I said, with a lot of these DA ministers, I've known them long before they were ministers, right? And I've seen the competency levels.
So the competency levels are there. Yeah. Will they be spoiled sports and over a small thing walk out?
You see, that's the problem. Because in the negotiations, what we saw was very childish behavior. Now, if you take this consistent emotional stance on, until I get my way, I'm not going to do it. Like that sort of attitude is not mature.
Will they continue with that attitude, or will they say, let's give it a try and try our best to help our country?
Look, I don't know. Like Steenings and he's the leader of the party, right? Him in agriculture feels weird. I don't know. It's just me who thinks that it feels very weird.
Listen, Hassan always says that's a very important industry for South Africa.
But I mean, the man can barely speak Afrikaans, but for a white man. Like it's like and the farmers have responded. Like I know the citrus growers union, they're all Afrikaans guys, right?
And they're happy he's now.
And they put CNAs in there who can. I don't think he passed Afrikaans in Matriculation, you know.
Well, let's just don't underestimate him. He can't talk Afrikaans. He's got an Afrikaans surname. I want to bring Zahid in here. Zahid, being a financial guru over the back in the days, Hassan made some important statements. Perhaps you want to comment, is that a realistic situation from an economic perspective? And do you believe there'll be market confidence and give an opportunity to the current ministers to see how they work this thing out?
I think Hassan hit it on the spot, right? It's, we've got the best strategy, we've got the best policies. Like anything out there is the execution on it. I think the way the market is at the moment is a wait and see kind of approach on it. So I think we passed the line on the GNU. There's some level of confidence, and now we're going to see the rubber on the road in terms of how people actually execute on these specific mandates. Okay, you mentioned about for the ordinary man in the street. I'm one of those, right? I'm not very politically astute, but I realize politics affects everyone's lives, playing in this humanitarian space as well. When I look at this cabinet, and without knowing these people intimately like our brother does, I look at how the structure, yes, it is bloated, but I see there's a play over here in terms of holding each other accountable. For the next 5 years, in my personal view, and it's my personal opinion, what I believe is going to happen is that the parties within the GNU are going to hold each other accountable, and they're also going to try to outperform each other. in terms of what's going to happen in
So it'll
2026.
be good competition.
It's going to be good competition. The local election in 2026 and then 2029 again with the national elections again. I think there's going to be really some hard work that these ministers etc. are going to put in just to kind of earn their weight in salt. So that's my personal view as an ordinary person on the street.
Zahid, there's a question for you. They're asking us, please tell us what happened to Naledi Pandor. I believe she retired because I think there was a question that why couldn't she continue as one of the ministers? And I think she's probably quite old and she wanted to give the youngsters a chance. And Ramaphosa said he wants to bring in a lot of youngsters as well. I want to bring you in, Imam. In Gauteng, I know you've just been keeping tabs with the Premier has announced his cabinet. Has he announced his cabinet, and perhaps you can enlighten us, or you're not sure at this stage what's the situation?
No, I'm not certain, but I think there is some announcements been made with the ANC, IFP, PA, Rise and Zanzi, and
not the
whether
EFF and MP
whether
are
it's
not
a
part.
correct version, I'm not sure, but I know Tasneem Motara is the MEC for Human Settlement. That's something
Is
that
she
is
part of the
actually-
ANC?
Yeah, she's ANC.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're not certain what is going on there. But allow me to comment on the issue of the GNU.
GNU, whether it's going to work, yes.
No. First of all, I think we need to have an understanding of how cabinet works. I'm not sure why so much of emphasis is even being put on ministers. Ministers don't run these departments.
The heads of departments,
It's
the
the
director
DGs
generals.
and the DDGs that are there for the last 10, 15, 20, and 30 years that are actually running it. By the time ministers even settle there, it's time for them to leave and
Now, I
go.
want to stop you right there. The DA is reported to have indicated that if their cabinet minister is appointed, they want to review the existing DGs and DDGs. Now, are those DGs and DDGs appointed in contract like the cabinet ministers, or are they permanent appointments? I understand they're 5-year appointments.
Actually, yes, they are. Remember, they are protected with the labor relations in the Labor
But
Act.
they have a contract for 5 years,
They
which
have-
is in line with the cabinet ministers.
Yes.
So, which means their contracts would have been lapsed,
No.
depending when they were appointed.
Their contracts are not in line with the term of the ministers and.
So they may have a year or two left.
And in fact, yes, yeah. So and they.
So you may have to go with them for a couple of years until you
in
appoint
fact,
somebody competent.
You'll probably be able to go through with them for the entire period of the
They may
term.
have been late appointments.
Yes. And remember, many of these people have been there for 10, 15, 20, 25 years.
So tactfully, those previous cabinet ministers could have reappointed them before the
Correct.
the elections.
Correct. But let me tell you what is more important to understand here. If you look at these appointments of these ministers and deputy ministers, other than Samantha Graham, not a single one of these ministers, let me repeat, not a single one of these ministers have had any experience in these portfolios that they've been put in. Not one. Go through their credentials and look at it. So none of them know, they were not even members of those portfolio committees in parliament to know anything
Were
about
they
that
MPs
particular.
during that time?
Whether they were MPs, whether they were shadow ministers for the DA, whatever it is, not in the portfolios that you gave them, which means they know absolutely nothing.
So they could have, but a lot of the deputies were there before, so they'll have to probably tap onto the deputies.
No. The deputies that were there were ANC deputies.
Will they share the
No, that's just the point. Okay. But these that are coming, the ministers I'm talking about, even the ANC ministers, like we're talking about Minister of Defense. Okay, at least you might get about 30% service there in any case, because that's what she gives you in education. But these things were all compromised. Now, where is that principle that we were attempting to apply and repeatedly raise concerns, attacking each other's, that you're putting people that are not fit for purpose, they got no experience, they don't have the skills, we must put the right, don't put cadre deployment. That's exactly what you've done. Because not even the DA, go through the entire list, I want to tell you, not a single one of them got any experience in that portfolio that they have been given. Yet,
so they're going to start from scratch.
They're starting from scratch. Yet they've appointed people, okay, left out those or gave them portfolios that they had experience in the others. What is the purpose of that? I mean, you've got somebody who knows about education, you're putting them somewhere else and taking, I mean, So what is this all about? But that's the first thing. So first of all, the DGs, DDGs and things run these departments.
So you say those DGs and DDGs that have still some time left in their contracts will have to continue to work with these.
Certainly, you can't
cabinet
break their
ministers.
contracts at this point in time.
So
by
they'll
the
have to
time you
review-
want to assess them, it depends whether the GNU will last until then and what is going to happen. But Zahid said something very important as well. Everybody is going to want to try and score points. First of all, let me tell you, the deputy positions are ceremonial positions. They mean nothing. In fact, you don't even get the respect from the ministers when it comes to the deputies.
And they don't even form part of the cabinet.
To be honest with you, they don't even get any
So
due
basically,
respect.
they just get additional remuneration for being.
It's just, to me, this is just a waste of taxpayers' money. That's the other thing, all right? But that's it. Now, if it was that easy, and I must agree with my brother Hassan there, that the ANC has put in some brilliant policies and never implemented it. But then the question is, how would you implement it now? Now you're worse off. Then you had a majority, you had the opportunity to implement it. Now you got people opposing you and attacking you all the time. Remember, these people...
But Tony Leon is saying that allow those ministers to do their work. Don't interfere. So they will look at those policies and they basically are good to be effective.
Let me ask you a simple question. Are you telling me that the DA, the IFP and things are going to encourage, motivate or support anything to do on the Palestinian cause?
Well, listen, at this point...
I'm only giving that as a one example before I go to the others.
That's right. Now, we'll have to look at that from sort of a political angle. But having said that, we're talking about improving service delivery in the government, which will go down to the province, which will go down to local government.
Yeah.
Now, the situation in the past was bad. The question I'm asking, and I'm waiting for the answer, will the situation improve because there's new blood that's coming and the DA is claiming they can rescue South Africa? In your opinion, being a parliamentarian for more than 10 years, do you think that it'll be a worse situation or will there be an improvement?
Okay, let me give you an example if you allow me. Let's look at corporate governance in the country. And we know 18 out of 257 municipalities got clean audit in South Africa. Who have you given the position of the Minister of Corporate Governance? Somebody who knows absolutely nothing about. Go and look at his history. Look at what experience he's got, and you'll see nothing of that sort. Number one. Let's go deeper than that. Who did KZN? Who did you give the position of the MEC for corporate governance?
To an IFP.
Individual. Who is he? Just come up with 322 million rand irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure in Zululand district municipality.
Was he the mayor there?
Mayor, yes. Okay. 322 million.
But the critics are saying he made a master move. He reintroduced the Section 154,
the
biggest municipality.
And
he brought in the two ANC appointees.
It is because you're not going deep into what is the ball game here. Let me tell you what the ball game is here. The ANC is divided in eThekwini. You've got those that are aligned to the Jacob Zuma, the Zandile Gumedes and everybody else, and you've got those that are aligned to the Cyril Ramaphosa's. The ANC themselves, that 154 was implemented from national. You couldn't deal with it here because Kokta had to deal with it and couldn't.
And Kokta did it.
President Ramaphosa had deliberately put the IFP there, gave them MEC for corporate governance, even though they know how high the levels of corruption.
So he knew
the
they
IFP
would go ahead and introduce
and
it.
now he's put him there for that man to go and do the dirty work, to fight his faction. The faction
Isn't that a good tactical move?
Sorry?
Isn't that a good tactical move?
Now, but at the expense of the people of the province. Because let me tell you, KZN is a very violent province. Whether you like it or not, it's a very violent province. You're sitting on, right now what you don't know is there's 1,200 police officers from the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and all other provinces sitting in 5-star luxury hotels in Durban right now. I'll take you there now. And
because they're concerned about the potential.
Cost? They are already here since 2 weeks before the election. They're still here. You know why they're here?
In case there's violence.
Because it's a ticking time bomb. You know what that is the cost to the economy alone? How long are you going to keep them there? Because the threat is still there.
Now, I want to stop you there, Imam. I know we're running out of time and I want to bring others in. there was a decline in service delivery. There was a resistance to Section 154 intervention by these experts. We spoke many a year about maladministration and corruption. Steps had to be taken. There were political parties, including those in the ANC, voting for administration of eThekwini. I being in the space, you being in the space, know what a mess has been created. When I spoke to a few leaders there, they saying that it's absolutely necessary for the intervention. This fellow from the IFP, whether he's knowledgeable or not, together with the Premier, have been bold enough to say, let's reintroduce and get support. Now, you're saying there's a time bomb because there's a political division here. What is the alternative? Because that was what came from National, and they said, let's have that intervention because ratepayers are not getting service delivery. And we know, and Zahid will tell you, that there's daily outages of water. Now, electricity has stopped, and Hassan says he's hoping that it continues to improve. But water outages is the order of the day in eThekwini. And when I spoke to Michael Sutcliffe, they prioritizing interventions because Senzo Mkhunu, when he was a minister of water, said that's top priority. But now, again, they pulled him out and they made him minister of police because Becky Keller was creating other havoc there and he's dropped out. So what is the alternative if they didn't go for this intervention? Because they have to take the risk that there may be a reaction, but at least a step in the right direction.
Now, I think we're missing a point here. There is no doubt that eThekwini is in an absolute mess. It needs an intervention. And I think we must not mix up issues. eThekwini is a mess, it needs intervention.
So the intervention is required.
The response I would have given you 2 months ago and the response I'll give you now is two different responses.
Can you
I
explain,
can tell you
why?
now that if you dissolve eThekwini tomorrow,
and you appoint a new council,
the ANC will lose completely, the MK will win eThekwini. I can guarantee you, you have it tomorrow, the MK will win eThekwini, you'll cut it.
But listen,
so where would you taking us? It's going to be worse than what it is.
Now, listen, you're delving into an area which we're going to have to explore soon because there's going to be a lot of resignations of ANC councillors who have joined.
I was going to tell you that as well.
So obviously that is another challenge and other councillors, etc. But I'm saying until that challenge takes place, with the coalition, it's still under ANC rule. I know that they haven't appointed a mayor, and I'm sure that will should be sort of appointed soon. We don't know who the person is going to be. Like Gauteng, there's a bit of confusion. Now, in terms of the Section 154 intervention, the officials have been appointed by COCTA. They've taken office. They got till the end of August to assess the situation and do a report as what interventions are required to improve service delivery. The ratepayers and the taxpayers are demanding that because they say we're not getting value for money. We're sick and tired of outages. In various areas, there's water outages. In this particular area where we are, there were several water outages. The burst pipes are repaired, and a couple of weeks later, they messed up again. They're blaming the infrastructure, but some people are saying sabotage. It could be, again, sabotage. So what you're telling now, Imam, is that there is a volcano that is there to erupt in various forms, and that's the fear. Can you just briefly unpack that?
If anybody believes you can resolve the eThekwini issue over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, I can tell you, you are far from the truth. eThekwini has been allowed to deteriorate over the last 20 some odd years. To such an extent, it's going to take you another 10, 20 years to get it right, first of all. I can tell you when I was a councillor that the water loss was 27%.
Now it's gone up to about 60%.
It's now gone to almost 60%. They're sitting with an 8 billion rand debt. When I was there, and you were there,
yes,
when I raised the concern about the problem where they had already spent 500 million on the integrated financial management system, that online, so it's still not working properly up to today.
The RMS system for billing.
The RMS system. Exactly the same thing. Let me also tell you, National Treasury, your custodian had the same problem too. And they haven't given it answer. But let's come back to it again. And I think there's something we're also missing very important here. All the focus seems to be, and it's creating a perception that just the ANC has been failed. And I'm not here to defend the ANC, not at all. Yes, they failed us, there's no doubt about it. But let me tell you, 18 out of 257 municipalities only got clean audit. Nobody's talking about all those other IFP-run municipalities, the DA-run municipalities in the Western Cape, Beaufort West. Nobody's talking about
So
those
there's a
things.
huge challenge.
So
that's
the
still being
problem you
awaited.
got with governance is all over the country. But what I'm saying is this, that if you want to solve the problem, you need to put competent people there, which is what we've agreed. If you remember what I said, independent people with the expertise and skill to identify the right people put for purpose. And that's what the DA followed.
Well,
and
this
said.
is what.
But you're not doing that.
This is what Section 154 is all about. These two senior officials involved in government and local government have got the mandate to give a report on how they see eThekwini currently and what are their proposals. And they may have to bring in new officials or additional officials, some experienced officials, to improve service delivery in the various departments. So we have to await that report, but at least the process has now commenced. I want to bring you in, Zahid.
They haven't been getting the cooperation from COCTA because it's ANC.
Well, now that they got the cooperation from COCTA, you mentioned they are still going to be challenged because we don't know the reaction of MK. We don't know the reaction of those councillors going to resign. You're going to have by-elections and various challenges and these audit reports that are qualified. Now, Zahid, I know that, when PwC was involved, and they used to be involved in the audit of eThekwini when I was there, and I know during the forensic investigations with Deloitte, they were involved. Now, these qualified audit reports in the various municipalities, and we will need to wrap up soon because we've got 10 minutes left. They do the report, as I understand, to the city manager, and then Exco has a look at it, and they look at the recommendations and try to implement, and some of the recommendations culminated with the Section 154 intervention. A lot of politicians, opposition politicians, are saying that maybe administration would have been, a better option. But side by side with all this, they are basically unfinished recommendations from the forensic department of the municipality to deal with disciplinary processes and criminal activities against the perpetrators of maladministration and corruption. Now, from an audit perspective, when the audit was conducted, surely the auditors would have said, firstly, these are the irregular expenditure, these are the problem areas, these are our recommendations, and you've got an audit committee that looks at that, a head audit committee and also an external individual. That is not taking place. So how do you see that improving in the various municipalities?
I think it goes back to what Imam is actually raising. It's around governance. My 21 years with PwC, I was not part of the forensic investigations, but I was privy to some of that information. And the reality that we face, and again goes back to taxpayers' money is being spent on those forensic audits. It costs millions and millions of rands. And yes, the Big Four do the work diligently. And what happens is once the report is presented, it stops there. Again, talking to your audit committees, your risk committees, your board, your council for that matter, and it stops with them. And we actually started inquiring just out of interest. Now, you guys have spent millions on these reports. What happens with these reports? Why
the implementation?
Yeah, what happens? And the guys just basically say that what, actually we have to actually kind of put it under the carpet because it'll go up to the highest authority within the country. There is some connection there. Now, tongue in cheek, we don't know whether it was a tongue in cheek comment, but if you look at what's happened with all our presidents, Jacob Zuma and our current president at the moment, it's a will and proper governance. Governance is about being unbiased and objective and independent in any decision you make. It applies to government. It applies to the private sector. Without that, you can go nowhere.
Okay, we need to wrap up. Hassan, you've been hearing what these gentlemen have been saying in terms of accountability, improved governance, and you said the GDP is also culminates in proper governance. Now, the DA being a watchdog here, and then they're very particular about dealing with corruption, maladministration. They use the word, we want to rescue South Africa, and this is what John Steiner is saying. Give us these positions and we're going to prove it. I asked the question and my colleagues couldn't or didn't want to answer because they said, okay, listen, we don't think it's going to work. There'll be challenges and etc. Are you optimistic that we might see light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think there will be implementation or the DA will ask for implementation and there'll be a subtle interference? How do you see it?
I don't think this is my opinion. I don't think in terms of my optimism is not stemming from the fact that the DA is part of the GNU. DA, while everybody will always talk about that the DA or Cape Town is a fantastically a very well run city and the like. DA is not a if you look at many of the other, remember they've been part of coalitions in Gauteng. They've been part. Those places have been done well. Joburg's one of the worst run cities now in the country for a long time. It's bad. Swan is bad. So I'm optimistic because while we can criticize, and rightfully so, Ramaphosa and his government, I think there is some slow progress being made. There is some. For me, still the biggest concern is KZN, and mainly because MK makes a significant portion of the province. The fact that they got 45% of the vote means they're a significant player within this province here. However, if you look at other parts and other areas, we've made progress in energy. We are making progress in terms of transport. Just look at the Transnet, what it was 12 months ago, what it was in November, December, when we had containers stacked up here in Durban Port and the retailers were complaining, the manufacturers, because they couldn't get stuff in. And look at what's happened in the last 6 months compared to that. There's actually been an improvement. There's been an improvement in many areas, while not significant, but noticeable. And I think that's because there has been good appointments that can execute and implement. The key again remains around getting the right skills and ensuring that those appointees implement and execute effectively. One other thing, municipalities remain the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues for this country, the biggest issue. And if you look at all the audits that came out, barring the ones that had unqualified, even the ones that had unqualified audits as well, what are the biggest issues? Unaccounted for expenditure.
Irregular expenditure.
Irregular expenditure. And not we're talking millions, we're talking billions.
Correct.
And eThekwini has become a master at that.
Correct.
Unfortunately, master as in inverted
In
commas.
violation of SCM policies.
That's the thing. I mean, I looked at one report recently that showed about every 100 Rand that's paid through rates and taxes, 10.90 goes to debt impairment. So firstly, people not paying. 7.50 is going to other operational costs, and that's in inverted commas. That's nearly 20% of your budget going into areas which shouldn't be the case. Now imagine that 20% went into infrastructure, spending on the water, spending on the electricity, spending on social welfare and the like.
7% in a eThekwini, 4% is going into hostels with no response to payment for
added
services.
to that, sorry.
Yeah.
40% on goods and services is more than the value of the goods.
Correct.
40%.
That's part of maladministration.
That's the other issue. You're not getting value for money. I come back again to the whole value for money story. Is that if you're paying for an item, you instead of going directly to the manufacturer or the retail, whoever it may be, but because of now the BE credentials but not BE credentials don't really matter, to be honest. It's more around the maladministration.
Corruption,
they go through a middleman or whoever it may be, and there's a massive premium that's put on it. Not because there's a value added provided, it's just because he feels that he's entitled to it and he carries on. That's the big issue. And if you just cut even half of that out, the meaningful impact that will have in terms of spending, and that spend should not go on employee costs, because again, employee costs makes up 27% of the municipality's spend. 27% of your rates and taxes is just going to employee costs. It should go towards infrastructure.
Well, the audit, as Zahid is saying, has uncovered all that. They made the recommendations to the audit committee, not being implemented, swept under the carpet. The forensic reports that are coming in from CIRU are being swept under the carpet because the head of department is implicated and somebody has to take action against him or her and the subordinates below. Now, because that individual is implicated, he's basically covering up for those below him. Right. And the bosses of the council, they implicated, so they decide to sweep everything under the carpet. Yeah. And this is why you're having all these things going ahead.
But
now, the DA is saying...
You're missing a very important point there, though. The political parties that are governing these local municipalities, all of them, wherever they're going to be, are benefiting from that corruption of that 40%. That is why they will never close that gap on that corruption.
But
That is the crux of the problem.
You know, I want to close on this matter now. And you were part of MPAC back in the day. You were very verbose, and I used to attend those committee meetings. And when there were issues coming up in human settlements, we spoke about consequential management. Those very head of departments that were implicated were not answering because the chair was complicit
Defending
with them.
That's what it is about.
So now this GNU that's coming, they're saying we're going to attack all this. They may not have the teeth to do it. Zahid, I just want to close now because we ran out of time. And I know they gave us extra time, but we ran out of time. Your chairman from Al Baraka, together with your CEO, has asked the question that all these cabinet ministers that are appointed, they don't see a single Indian. And there is cause for concern because the question that your CEO is raising with me is that why aren't our Indian stroke Muslim community getting involved with the community structures, the ratepayer associations, the civic structures? Because back in the day, the NIC was formed, they had very strong ratepayer associations and civic structures to get back to basics so that our youngsters now become civic representatives to get involved in local government. Now, a man is sitting here and he says they're preparing for 2026 local government elections. Now, there have been suggestions, and obviously we feed South Africa together with Al Ansaar Foundation and others. We're going to do what we call an NGO summit to discuss these issues because we've got a lot of valuable individuals that have got experience in civic awareness, but we just need to revive because they're disillusioned. They have a lot of apathy about the current situation in local government, but we need to revive and give them hope because, as you said, everybody loves South Africa. We've got a lot of opportunities here. We've got a very strong mining industry, agricultural industry, and there's nowhere to go. And even our professionals want to stick around. Some of them have emigrated, want to come back. What is your closing comments in terms of really getting back to basics to train our individuals to start becoming politicians and representatives in council, like councillors, etc.? And we got the experts like, Imam here, to open the door come 2026 for our individuals. What's your advice to our listeners out there?
I think my closing message on this is that, as a Muslim community, as an Indian community, we invest a lot in terms of humanitarian work, right? Now we need to be very strategic in where we spend our money.
Absolutely.
Politics affects everyone's lives. Correct. I told you, if I want to, as an individual, raise money to feed, without a problem, I can raise 5 million within a few days. I try to raise 500,000 to help a political party that shares the same values as us. It becomes a bit of a challenge. So my recommendation in this aspect is we need to think more strategically. We need to invest in this up and coming leaders, sponge off people like Imam and those that have been part of the struggle, and bring that passion back into our youth, saying that if you don't make or step up, you're actually going to create a disaster for yourself and your grandkids, right? The reality is I lived in 18 countries. I worked in 18 countries. There's nothing better than South Africa.
Absolutely.
Let's not be part of the reason why it fails. Let's be part of the solutions.
Excellent. I think it's important that we become civic aware. We get involved. No sense talking. Get involved. Get our lobbying done with the political participants. Is Mohamed Ayaz here or is he left?
Yeah.
Mohamed Ayaz, your closing comments. I know you're tired and I brought you in the wrong time, but do you agree that we got to create this civic awareness? We got to create the platform for our individuals and householders and residents becoming members of civic organizations and ratepayer associations and get involved in local government elections.
What you're saying is very pertinent because I think we've reached a level of people love to complain. Nobody really wants to get involved. And it's like, even with voting, the turnout was still abysmal, right? Realistically,
I think it was 56% compared to 68% in the last election.
And that's the thing. People, we love to play this victim card where it's like, oh, woe is me. The corruption is so intense. The thing is, we see what has happened in Venezuela and different parts of the world where people have come together. What happened now was in Kenya. Kenya is a prime example where the people, literally the youth, the Gen Z said, we are not allowing you to tax us more. And the Kenyan president literally retracted signing that bill, right? The power of the people is important. We allow ourselves to consistently be divided, whether it be Memon, Cockney, whatever it may be. That's specifically referring to us, but there's levels of colorism and different socioeconomic disparities that create these divides, and that is the tool the elites have used for centuries, right? Because there are a lot more things that we have in common than what differentiates us. The thing that the 1% doesn't that the masses don't realize is that in order to enforce their brutality and all their autocratic views, you require the average layman who is too scared to speak out, right? There's power in the masses, and people need to educate themselves. The problem is, when I do my production, like just being head of Radio Al-Ansar, I literally try to force feed information down people's throats in whatever way I can, because I feel like in order for you to make the right choices, you need to be informed. So civic duty is important. It's something that we need to take seriously. And you know what? Don't come to me and complain if you haven't taken the time to educate yourself about something. I think in closing, that's something that's important. I really wanted to touch on the Department of Education, but like let's leave it for next
maybe
week.
on another occasion.
Yeah.
We'll have a special program.
Yeah.
Imam, I want to bring you in. You mentioned that you want to encourage people to get involved in local government elections, which is taking place in 2026. Because when I interviewed you last week, you mentioned all's not lost. You know, I'm a spotty, individual. We may not have been successful, but there's another election in 2 years' time, and government is mindful of that. Now, a lot of our populations out there, are not becoming civic active. And a lot of youth that we're hoping would become politicians, future politicians, here's an opportunity for them to get involved. No point in complaining later and then finding that you missed the boat, because when I was in local government, I recall that when we used to work with the black politicians, they used to ensure officials go to the townships and meet with these civic organizations who used to tell us what their demands in the areas were, and they were active civic activists. They became part of branch executive committees, ratepayer associations, and when the budget was prepared and presented, they challenged the budget for their areas and they prioritized their demands. Now, if you go to some of our Indian areas, people don't even know what a budget looks like or what it's all about. Imam, you want to give us your closing comments on getting involved in civic activities to our individual listeners out there? And it's important that the youth get involved, because they have to now get involved in the running of the country, because large amounts of money are invested in the country.
Well, let me start off by saying, if you look at the dynamics of this election, you would find that the white community voted for the whites. The colored community voted for the colored in the PA and the NCC. The blacks voted for the blacks. The Zulus voted for the Zulus, if you break it down even further. Where are the Indians?
They voted for either the DA or maybe partly for the other parties.
So the Indian community, and if you look at the sacrifices that were made by our forefathers for us to be where we are today, we have forgotten that. I think we have spoiled our kids and things to such an extent. We made sacrifices so that they could be okay today. And I think that has contributed to this apathy amongst our people, particularly the Indian community. And that is why I said what we need to do now is to, and I must agree with my brothers here, we have the people, the youth today, we have amongst ours the ones with the capacity, with the integrity, they can make the difference. But they're not part of mainstream
So they got
politics.
2 years to really make a difference.
Your solution to the Iteguini problem is to get the right kind of people, not this 154 all. They're going to fight, they're going to do it. Getting the right kind of people. And the only way, you need to also start with the younger generation. That is what the Zionists do. They identify you at an early stage. They groom you, they educate you, they fund you, they brainwash you, they do everything, and strategically place you everywhere. That is the route we are going, and it's the only route that we're going to be able to protect the interest of particularly our community.
So all's not lost. There's an opportunity.
No, certainly there's an opportunity
to
in
mobilize
2026,
and
and that's the
prioritize
direction we're going.
And get the right.
There is already discussions between individuals all over. There's been some meetings that have been taking place, and that is what we're working.
Well, listen,
but what is important, brother, is this message must go out to the masses to us, the parents, to encourage our youth, our children, to get involved, because politics is a way of life. You can't separate it. And if we're not going to do that, I can tell you the generations to come are going to suffer in this country.
Correct. And our board's discussions are along those lines, that the Al Ansar Foundation, together with the other NGOs, with the Al Baraka Bank, will be prioritizing a workshop and various sessions with various NGOs to talk about these issues and go about trying to identify individuals with potential to get involved with local government politics and civic structures. We cannot have a situation where, the old civic structures with, a few members are continuing without any progressive thinking. So I think that our message to our listeners is, let's become civic active. You got 2 years to really prioritize. And the best part of local government elections is it's going to be based on wards. So if you support a councillor who's standing in a particular ward and he's got the right number of votes, he wins that ward, he comes to a council and he goes there and he represents the political party to improve service delivery, whoever is involved, because that should be our priority. Your closing comments, Hassan?
I think there's interesting times ahead for us over the next particularly the rest of this year, but going forward. Key focus is don't lose hope. I think if you look at there is some momentum, positive momentum coming through. Earlier today, I saw the head of the NPA. She gave a small interview on Shamila Batoy. She said, we've been criticized and we've rightfully, as in, why we haven't brought in big cases and we haven't prosecuted and the like, but see us over the next 12 months. There will be some reasonably decent cases that will come through. Hopefully so. If you get one or two big hits that will come through over the next 12 months, it will make more from a confidence perspective. Remember, this is all about confidence. You have confidence in terms of you execute, and confidence builds momentum, and it's a chain reaction that happens after that. And that's what we want. We want confidence build up, some positive momentum, and you will see the effect of that will continue to fall positively. But the main thing I still, I'll pray for, and I'll make sure that, inshallah, I hope it never happens, is that this province in particular, as Imam mentioned, remains a concern. And we must just pray and hope that things go through relatively smoothly, and that hopefully that there's no sort of instigators that what we had seen previously that tries and creates sort of fractions of it.
Shukran, Hassan. On that note, we ran out of time, 20 minutes out of our time, and that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's News in Focus. But I just want to sum up. I think we had an interesting discussion. A lot of it revolved around GNU and whether it'll work or not. Many people are positive. We firmly believe that MK might cool off, because the video that's circulating is that they started off with Surah Fatiha in that convention they had, and some of the leaders are saying that Islam is the solution to the problems of this country. And as Muslims, we firmly believe that Allah is in control, and Allah will protect us if we turn to Allah for guidance. So South Africa has got a lot of positives, and we're hearing the positives coming through. Everybody is committed to have a clean administration, to improve governance. And over and above getting involved, like what we're talking about, it's important we get involved. Let's consider the seerah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and how he ran the government, and try to give this pattern to our fellow colleagues in South Africa, and introduce some of the Islamic principles in governance. And inshallah, in that way, our leaders will begin to understand the need for clean and good governance. And at the same time, we have the power of the dua. And with our ibadat, let's make the dua and turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah's help came in a lot of situations, including the unrest that took place. Now, I know that those cabinet positions may have been announced. And before I close up, I just wanted to know, Zaid, have you got an update on the cabinet positions in Gauteng? Perhaps, Imam, you want to read it out, or Zaid, you just want to read out what is the appointment, so that we know whether the DA has been left out as threatened by the Premier,
Yeah. So I'm not going to give names. I'm just going to give the political parties affiliated.
Yes, correct.
So health is ANC, roads and transport ANC, environment is PA, Cocta is ANC, social development is ANC, human settlements is ANC, agricultural and rural is RISE. Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Are
about
you
it.
joking?
Yeah. So it's a combination of PA, ANC, and RISE.
I
That's
think
gonna be so fun to watch.
I think what has emerged is that the threat of IFP, the EFF and MK getting involved, that didn't materialize. So it's a quick fix to get the situation going.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, it's not a train smash because the DA is involved elsewhere. And perhaps they agreed to disagree and let's see how that pans out, because there's no compulsion, because the DA is still running Western Cape, the ANC is running the other provinces. So we make du'as that whoever is in control, Allah gives hidayat and the situation improves. So Alhamdulillah, brothers, there's been some very good discussions from our panelists. I want to thank Hassan, Motala, Zahid Fakey, our brother Mohamed, Ayaz, and brother Imam for joining us this evening. I think you guys are very experienced in the government sector and in politics, and I think our listeners got valuable information. But we will continue next week on this discussion, and we will pick up other issues. But I think Zahid, some very important information you gave on the initiatives taken by WeFeed and other organizations on the job creation, which is necessary for various organizations to get involved. And we will continue with this discussion. We'll have more workshops of this nature. Together with the help of Imam and other politicians, we will also look at the formation of ratepayer associations and the involvement of our communities in ratepayer associations, and we'll have more programs of that nature. So to our listeners, shukran for joining us. To our tech, Zakaria, he's done a wonderful job. The podcast will be ready within the next day or two, and we'll circulate it. But I thank all of you all for joining us. Until next Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Get ready for the biggest soccer extravaganza. The